The cargo bay of Station Kepler 7 hummed with the familiar sounds of commerce. The hiss of pneumatic loaders, the chatter of traders haggling over prices, and the metallic clang of shipping containers being stacked. Naya Viridian moved through the controlled chaos with practiced ease, her datapad clutched in one hand while she checked inventory manifests with the other. At 24, she had been running her father's shipping business for 3 years, ever since his heart finally gave out from the grief that had consumed him after her mother's execution. The weight of that loss still pressed against her chest like a physical thing. Even after 7 years, Marina Viridian had been convicted of selling weapons to Zephyrian rebels, a crime that carried the death penalty under the Galactic Trade Accords. The trial had been swift, the evidence seemingly overwhelming, and the sentence carried out within a month. Naya's father, Garrett, had never recovered from watching his wife of 25 years face the neural disruptor, maintaining her innocence until the very end. Miss Viridian called a voice from behind her. She turned to see Jorik, her lead dock supervisor, approaching with a concerned expression. "We've got a problem with the cargo from the Zephyrian transport. One of the containers is, well, you'd better come see for yourself." Naya followed him through the maze of shipping containers to the far end of the bay, where a sleek, crystalline transport vessel sat in docking bay 12. The Zephyrians were known for their biotechnology and their almost ethereal beauty, with their translucent skin and luminescent markings that pulsed with their emotions. They were also the species her mother had allegedly betrayed. "It's container ZX7742, Jorik explained, stopping before a standard shipping unit. "The manifest says it contains medical supplies, but the bioscanners are picking up something else, something alive." Naya's heart skipped. Smuggling living beings was a serious crime, one that could shut down her business permanently. "Have you contacted station security?" "Not yet. Thought you'd want to handle this personally, given your family's history with the Zephyrians." She nodded grimly. The last thing she needed was another scandal involving her family and the Zephyrian people. "Override the lock. Let's see what we're dealing with." The container door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a cramped interior filled with standard medical supply crates. But huddled in the back corner, barely visible in the dim light, was a figure that made Naya's breath catch in her throat. It was a Zephyrian male, his usually luminescent skin dim and flickering weakly. Dark fluid that could only be blood pooled beneath him, and his breathing was shallow and labored. "By the stars," Jorik whispered. "He's dying." Naya stepped into the container, her medical training from her youth kicking in. The Zephyrian's eyes opened at her approach, revealing irises that shifted between deep blue and silver. Even in his weakened state, he was beautiful in the way all Zephyrians were, with high cheekbones and features that seemed carved from living crystal. "Please," he whispered, his voice carrying the musical quality of his species. "I must speak with you." "Marina Viridian's daughter." Naya's blood turned to ice. "How do you know my mother's name?" The Zephyrian's hand reached out, grasping weakly at her sleeve. "I am Zorith Kane. I was there when they framed her, when they murdered her for their lies." The world seemed to tilt around Naya. "What are you talking about?" "The weapons," Zorith gasped, his luminescent markings flickering more rapidly now. "They were never sold to rebels. Your mother, she discovered the truth. That's why they killed her." Jorik moved closer, his hand hovering over his communate. "Miss Viridian, we need to get station security. This could be—" "No." Naya's voice was sharp, commanding. "Not yet. Give us a moment." She knelt beside Zorith, her hands shaking as she pulled out her emergency medical kit. "What truth? What did my mother discover?" Zorith's eyes focused on her with effort. "The conspiracy. Human officials, Zephyrian nobles. They were selling weapons to both sides of the conflict. Your mother found the real shipping manifests, the ones that showed where the weapons actually went. She was going to expose them all." Naya's hands worked automatically, applying pressure to his wounds while her mind reeled. "That's impossible." The evidence against her was overwhelming. Financial records, shipping logs, communications, all fabricated. Zorith interrupted, wincing, as she pressed a coagulant patch to a particularly deep gash. "I should know. I was ordered to help create them. Naya stared at him, torn between hope and fury. You helped frame my mother? I was a junior analyst in the Zephyrian Trade Authority. My superior, Lord Vaxon, ordered me to alter the shipping records when I refused, when I threatened to expose the truth. He gestured weakly at his battered body. I was declared a traitor and exiled. They've been hunting me ever since. The medical supplies in Naya's kit were barely adequate for human injuries, let alone Zephyrian physiology, but she did what she could. Why should I believe you? You could be lying to save yourself. Zorith's hand fumbled in his robes, pulling out a small, crystalline data storage device. Because I kept copies, everything. The real shipping manifests, the communications between the conspirators, the orders to eliminate your mother. It's all here. Naya stared at the device, her heart pounding. 7 years my family has lived under the shadow of my mother's supposed crimes. My father died believing his wife was a traitor. She was a hero, Zorith whispered. She died because she chose truth over profit, justice over safety. They feared her because she could not be bought or intimidated. Tears she had held back for years finally spilled down Naya's cheeks. The neural disruptor. She suffered because of their lies, and I have suffered for refusing to participate in those lies. Zorith replied, but perhaps together, we can make their deaths mean something. Jorah cleared his throat nervously. Miss Viridian. His life signs are stabilizing, but he needs proper medical attention. And station security is going to notice the delay in processing this cargo soon. Naya looked from the data device to Zorith's face. Despite his obvious pain and exhaustion, there was something in his eyes that reminded her of her mother, a fierce determination to do what was right, regardless of the cost. We need to get you to a medical facility, she said finally. But not here. Too many people who might recognize you. There's a clinic on the lower levels. Zorith suggested, run by a human doctor who doesn't ask questions about species or immigration status. I've used her services before. Naya made her decision. Jorah, I need you to file a report stating that this container held only medical supplies as manifested. No anomalies, no discrepancies. But Miss Viridian, I'll take full responsibility, and I'll make sure you're compensated for any risks. She looked back at Zorith. Can you walk? With assistance. Together, they helped him to his feet. His weight against her shoulder was lighter than she expected, and she could feel the faint warmth of his bioluminescent markings through his clothing. For a moment, she found herself noticing the subtle sweet scent that all Zephyrians carried, like flowers blooming in starlight. One more thing, Zorith said as they prepared to leave the container. The conspiracy isn't over. Some of the original participants are still in positions of power. If they discover I'm alive, if they learn what I carry, they'll try to kill us both. Naya finished. I understand. Are you prepared for that? To risk everything for the truth about someone who died 7 years ago? Naya thought of her mother's final words, broadcast live during the execution. I am innocent of these crimes. Someday, someone will prove it. She thought of her father, who had died believing his wife was a traitor. She thought of the years of shame and whispered accusations that had followed her family. My mother died believing someone would clear her name, she said quietly. Maybe that someone is me. As they made their way through the station's corridors, Naya supporting Zorith's weight, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. It was fragile, dangerous, and could easily be shattered. But it was real. The data device in her pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. If Zorith was telling the truth, it contained proof that her mother had been innocent, that she had died for someone else's greed and corruption. But it also contained evidence that would put them both in mortal danger. The clinic on level 47 was exactly as Zorith had described, a small, discreet facility tucked between a recycling plant and a hydroponics lab. The doctor, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and steady hands, asked no questions about Zorith's injuries or his species. She simply got to work, her skilled hands moving with practiced efficiency. As Naya watched the doctor work, she found herself studying Zorith's face, even pale and wounded. He was striking in the way all Zephyrians were. But there was something else, a strength in his features, a determination that matched her own. When he caught her watching him, he managed a weak smile. "Thank you," he said simply. "For believing me, for helping me. Don't thank me yet," Naya replied. "First we need to verify what's on that data device. Then we need to figure out how to use it without getting ourselves killed." The doctor finished her work and stepped back. "He'll need rest and proper nutrition, but he should recover fully." The wounds were serious, but not fatal. As they left the clinic, Zorith Wall. The abandoned mining facility on Kepler-7's third moon had been dormant for over a decade. Its automated systems powered down and its corridors empty. Save for the occasional maintenance droid, it was exactly the kind of place fugitives could disappear into without attracting attention. Naya piloted her small transport through the facility's docking bay, the magnetic clamps engaging with a soft thud that echoed through the empty space. "How did you know about this place?" she asked Zorith as they gathered their supplies. "I've been hiding in places like this for 3 years, he replied, his movements still careful but much stronger after 2 days of rest and proper medical care. When you're declared an enemy of 2 governments, you learn to find the forgotten corners of the galaxy. The facility's main operations center still had power, its backup generators humming quietly in the depths of the complex. Naya activated the environmental controls while Zorith set up a portable data terminal he'd retrieved from his hidden cache of supplies. The soft blue glow of the holographic display cast strange shadows on the walls as he inserted the crystalline storage device. "Before we begin," Zorith said, his fingers hovering over the controls, "I need you to understand what this will show you. It's not just evidence of your mother's innocence. It's a window into the worst aspects of both our species: greed, corruption, and the willingness to sacrifice innocent lives for profit." Naya settled into a chair beside him, close enough that she could smell that distinctive Zephyrian scent of starflowers and ozone. "I've lived with the consequences of their lies for 7 years. I think I can handle the truth." Zorith activated the display, and immediately the air filled with holographic documents, communication logs, and financial records. But it was the first video file that made Naya's breath catch. In her throat, it showed a conference room she recognized from news broadcasts, the Zephyrian Trade Authority's Executive Council chamber. "This was recorded for months before your mother's arrest," Zorith explained. "I was required to attend as a junior analyst, but I had a habit of keeping personal recordings for my own protection." The hologram showed a gathering of both human and Zephyrian officials. Lord Vaxon, the Zephyrian Trade Minister, sat at the head of the table, his luminescent markings pulsing with satisfaction. Beside him sat a man Naya recognized immediately, Counselor Vex Thorn, one of the most powerful human officials in the sector. "The profits from our arrangement continue to exceed projections," Thorn was saying, his voice carrying clearly through the recording. "Both the rebels and the government forces are buying weapons at premium prices. As long as they keep fighting, we keep profiting." "Indeed," Lord Vaxon replied, his musical voice carrying undertones of greed. "The beauty of selling to both sides is that neither can achieve a decisive victory. The conflict continues indefinitely." Naya felt sick. They were prolonging the war deliberately. The Zephyrian civil conflict was incredibly profitable for certain individuals. Zorith confirmed. Weapons, medical supplies, reconstruction materials. They were making fortunes from both sides. On the recording, another voice spoke up, a woman Naya didn't recognize. "What about the shipping manifests? Someone's bound to notice the discrepancies eventually." "That's where our friend Marina Viridian comes in," Thorn said with a cold smile. "She handles a significant portion of the shipping logistics for the sector. Her company's reputation for honesty and transparency makes her the perfect cover for our operations. But she doesn't know she's being used," Lord Vaxon added. "Her legitimate shipments provide cover for our weapons transfers. The beautiful irony is that her very integrity makes her useful to us." Naya's hands clenched into fists. They were using her reputation to hide their crimes. "It gets worse," Zorith warned, advancing to the next recording. This one was dated just 2 weeks before Marina's arrest. The same conference room. But now the atmosphere was tense, urgent. "We have a problem," Thorn announced without preamble. "Marina Viridian has been asking questions about shipping discrepancies. She's noticed that some of her manifests don't match the actual cargo deliveries. Lord Vaxon's markings flared with anger. How much does she know? Too much, replied the unknown woman. She's been investigating on her own, cross-referencing delivery records with inventory reports. She's close to uncovering the entire operation. Then we eliminate her, Vaxon said simply. Make it look like she was the one selling weapons to rebels. Her own reputation for honesty will work against her. No one will believe she would do such a thing without overwhelming evidence. Naya felt tears streaming down her face. She was murdered for being dishonest, for caring too much about doing the right thing. Zorith paused the recording and turned to her. I'm sorry. I know this is difficult, but you need to see all of it. The next recording showed the planning session from Marina's frame-up. Financial records were fabricated, communication logs were altered, and shipping manifests were doctored. Naya watched, in horror as her mother's destruction was planned with cold efficiency. My assignment was to create false shipping records showing weapons deliveries to rebel contacts. Zorith explained. When I refused, when I threatened to expose the truth, they declared me a traitor and issued execution orders. How did you escape? I had friends in the trade authority who disagreed with the corruption, but were too afraid to speak out. One of them warned me just hours before security forces arrived at my quarters. I've been running ever since. The recordings continued, showing the aftermath of Marina's execution. The conspirators celebrated their success, dividing up the profits from their expanded operations. They spoke of Marina's death as a necessary business expense, nothing more. There's something else, Zorith said quietly, advancing to a different set of files. Your mother wasn't their only victim. They've framed or eliminated 17 other people over the past 5 years. Anyone who got too close to the truth. The files showed a pattern of murders disguised as accidents, suicides, and executions for fabricated crimes. All of them had been honest officials, investigators, or business owners who had stumbled across evidence of the conspiracy. They're still operating, Naya realized, still selling weapons, still profiting from conflicts across the sector, and still eliminating anyone who threatens their operation, Zorith confirmed. Which is why we need to be very careful about how we proceed. These people have the resources and connections to make us disappear permanently. Naya stood and began pacing, her mind racing. This evidence is overwhelming. Surely the authorities would have to act if we presented it to them. Which authorities? Zorith asked gently. Counselor Thorne sits on the Sector Security Council. Lord Vaxon heads the Zephyrian Trade Authority. They have allies and puppets throughout both governments. Who exactly would we trust with this information? The weight of their situation settled on Naya like a heavy blanket. Then what do we do? Let them continue murdering innocent people. We need to find someone we can trust completely. Someone with the power to act on this evidence and the courage to stand up to these people. Zorith stood and moved to her side. But first, we need to survive long enough to find them. As if summoned by his words, an alarm began sounding throughout the facility. The proximity sensors had detected incoming ships. They found us, Naya whispered. Zorith was already moving, gathering the data storage devices and essential supplies. The mining facility has emergency escape tunnels. We can use them to reach the secondary docking bay. They ran through corridors that hadn't seen life in years, their footsteps echoing off metal walls. Behind them, Naya could hear the distant sounds of docking clamps engaging and airlock doors opening. Their pursuers had arrived. How did they track us? She gasped as they reached the emergency tunnel system. They must have been monitoring station security feeds, Zorith replied, leading her through a narrow maintenance tunnel. Or they have sources inside the medical clinic. The tunnel opened into a smaller docking bay that housed several ancient mining shuttles. Zorith quickly activated one of them, his fingers flying over the controls with practiced efficiency. These ships are decades old, Naya protested. Will they even fly? They'll have to, Zorith replied as the shuttle's engines coughed to life. Because the alternative is death. As they lifted off, Naya could see armed figures moving through the main docking bay. They had escaped just minutes ahead of their pursuers. Where are we going? She asked. I have a contact on Titan Station, Zorith said. Someone who might be able to help us get this evidence to the right people. As they flew through the dark space between moons, Naya found herself studying Zorith's profile. The stress of their situation had caused his bioluminescent markings to pulse more rapidly, creating patterns of light that were oddly beautiful. There was something mesmerizing about the way the light played across his features. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for keeping that evidence safe all these years, for risking your life to preserve the truth about my mother." Zorith glanced at her, his expression softening. She was a remarkable woman. In all the recordings, in all the evidence of corruption and greed, she stands out as someone who truly cared about justice. The galaxy lost something precious when she died. I barely remember her sometimes, Naya admitted, the pain of Losi. Titan Station sprawled across the largest moon of Saturn, like a glittering city of steel and crystal. Its massive domes containing nearly 2 million inhabitants from dozens of different species. The station served as the administrative heart of the outer system, making it both the perfect place to find allies and the most dangerous location for fugitives, carrying evidence against powerful officials. Naya and Zorith docked their stolen mining shuttle in a commercial bay on the station's lower levels, where the registration protocols were more relaxed and credits could buy discretion. The docking master, a grizzled human with cybernetic implants covering half his face, barely glanced at their falsified transit codes before waving them through. "Your contact," Naya said as they made their way through the crowded corridors. "How do you know we can trust them?" "Because he's the one who warned me about the execution order 3 years ago," Zorith replied, pulling his hood up to hide his distinctive Zephyrian features. Talon Cross used to work for Zephyrian Trade Authority Security before he transferred to Titan Station. He's one of the few honest officials I've ever met. They found Talon Cross in his office on level 15, buried under a mountain of security reports and looking like he hadn't slept in days. The station's chief of security was a lean man in his 40s with prematurely gray hair and intelligent brown eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. When Zorith entered his office, Talon's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon before recognition dawned. "Zorith Kane." He breathed. "You're supposed to be dead." "Many people wish I were," Zorith replied, lowering his hood. "But I've been very careful to disappoint them." Talon's gaze shifted to Naya, his expression curious but wary. "And you are Naya Viridian, Marina Viridian's daughter." The security chief's eyes widened. "The weapons dealer who was executed 7 years ago. My mother was innocent," Naya said firmly, "and we have proof." For the next hour, they showed Talon the evidence Zorith had preserved. The security chief watched the recordings with growing anger, his jaw tightening as the scope of the conspiracy became clear. When the final file finished playing, he sat back in his chair and ran his hands through his hair. This is incredible," he said finally. "Do you realize what you're showing me? Half the people in these recordings are still in positions of power. Councillor Thorne is being considered for promotion to the Sector Council. Lord Vaxon just negotiated a major trade agreement with the Earth Alliance, which is why we need someone with authority to act on this evidence," Zorith said. "Someone who can't be bought or intimidated." Talon laughed bitterly. "You want me to arrest a sector councillor and a Zephyrian trade minister based on 3-year-old recordings? I'd be relieved of duty before I finished filing the charges." "Then what do you suggest?" Naya asked. "We need more than just recordings," Talon said, standing and beginning to pace. "We need current evidence, something that shows the conspiracy is still active, and we need to present it in a way that makes it impossible for them to suppress or dismiss." "The Galactic Trade Assembly," Zorith said suddenly. "It's meeting here on Titan Station next week. Representatives from every major government and trade organization will be present, including Thorne and Vaxon." Naya realized, if we could present the evidence there, in front of all those witnesses, they'd have to act on it. Talon finished. "But getting access to the assembly won't be easy. Security will be incredibly tight, and both Thorne and Vaxon will have their own protection details." "You could get us in," Zorith suggested, as part of the security team. Talon shook his head. "Too risky. If they suspect anything, you'd be walking into a trap." He paused, considering. "But there might be another way. The assembly allows for citizen petitions. formal presentations of evidence. Regarding trade violations or corruption, if we could file the paperwork properly. They have to hear us out, Naya said. In front of everyone. It's dangerous, Talon warned. Once you file that petition, Thorn and Vaxen will know exactly where you are and what you're planning. They'll have 6 days to find you and eliminate the threat. Then we'll have to make sure they don't find us, Zorth said. Talon studied them both for a long moment. You realize what you're asking me to risk? My career, my life, everything I've worked for? My mother was murdered for being honest, Naya said quietly. How many more innocent people will die if we do nothing? The security chief was quiet for several minutes, staring out the window at the stars beyond. Finally, he turned back to them. I'll help you, but we do this my way, with proper precautions. And if things go wrong, if we're compromised, you run. Don't try to be heroes. Over the next 3 days, they worked to prepare their case while staying hidden in a series of safe houses Talon had established throughout the station. The security chief proved to be invaluable, using his access to official databases to verify the information in Zorth's recordings and cross-reference it with current intelligence reports. The conspiracy is definitely still active, he reported. During one of their clandestine meetings, I've traced at least 6 recent weapons shipments that match the pattern in your evidence. They're still prolonging conflicts, still profiting from both sides. As they worked together, Naya found herself growing closer to both men, but especially to Zorth. The Zephyrian's quiet strength and unwavering dedication to justice reminded her powerfully of her mother, but there was something more, a growing attraction that she found both thrilling and terrifying. It started with small moments. The way his bioluminescent markings pulsed more brightly when she entered a room. The gentle touch of his hand when he helped her navigate the station's crowded corridors. The way his eyes seemed to hold hers just a moment longer than necessary when they spoke. On the 4th night, as they reviewed their presentation for the 100th time, Talon excused himself to check on security arrangements, leaving them alone in the small apartment that served as their current hiding place. Are you afraid? Zorth asked, settling beside her on the worn couch. Terrified, Naya admitted, but also excited. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm doing something that matters, something my mother would be proud of. She would be proud, Zorth said softly. You're everything she was, brave, honest, determined to do what's right regardless of the cost. Naya turned to face him fully, struck by the intensity in his silver blue eyes. How do you do it? How do you stay so committed to justice when it's cost you everything? Your home, your career, your people. Because the alternative is to let evil triumph, he replied, and because he hesitated, his markings flickering with what she had learned was nervousness. Because I've found something worth fighting for that I didn't expect. What's that? Instead of answering with words, Zorth reached up and gently touched her face. His skin was warm, and she could feel the subtle electrical charge that all Zephyrians carried. You, he said simply. I've found you. The kiss that followed was unlike anything Naya had ever experienced. There was a literal spark when their lips met, a gentle electrical sensation that seemed to connect them on a deeper level. Zorth's markings flared brightly, casting dancing shadows on the walls, and Naya felt a warmth spreading through her entire body when they broke apart. Both were breathing heavily. Is this normal? Naya asked, still feeling the electrical tingling on her lips. Zorth smiled, the first truly happy expression she had seen from him. Zephyrians form deep emotional bonds through bioelectric resonance. When we find someone we're truly compatible with, there's a physical manifestation. And are we? Very compatible, he confirmed, his markings pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. I've never experienced anything like this before. They spent the rest of the night talking, sharing stories of their childhoods, their dreams, their fears about the future. Naya learned that Zorth had been an artist before joining the Trade Authority, specializing in light sculptures that told stories through color and movement. He had given up his art to pursue justice, but she could see the artist's soul still burning within him. After this is over, she said as dawn light began filtering through the apartment's windows. What will you do? I don't know, he admitted. I've been running for so long. I've forgotten what it's like to plan for a future. Maybe you could stay, Naya suggested, then blushed at her own boldness. I mean, if you wanted to, the shipping business could use someone with your knowledge of interspecies trade regulations. Zorth's markings brightened. You would want that, even knowing what I am, what my people did to your mother. Your people didn't kill my mother, Naya said firmly. Corrupt individuals did. There's a difference. The morning of the Galactic Trade Assembly arrived with stunning swiftness. Talon had arranged for them to enter the main auditorium as part of a citizens' advocacy group, their true identities hidden behind carefully crafted false documentation. The assembly hall was magnificent, a soaring chamber with transparent aluminum walls that offered a breathtaking view of Saturn and its rings. Delegates from hundreds of worlds filled the tiered seating, their various forms creating a tapestry of galactic diversity. Naya spotted Counselor Thorn immediately, a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and cold gray eyes. He sat in the human delegation section, projecting the chaos that erupted in the Galactic Trade Assembly Hall was immediate and deafening. Delegates shouted over each other in dozens of languages, some demanding immediate arrests while others called for formal investigations. Through it all, Naya kept her eyes fixed on Counselor Thorn and Lord Vaxon. Both men had vanished from their seats the moment the presentation ended. We need to get out of here, Talon said urgently, appearing at their side. My security feeds are showing armed personnel moving toward all the exits. These aren't station security. Zorth grabbed Naya's hand, his markings flashing with alarm. Private mercenaries. Thorn and Vaxon must have had contingency plans in place. They pushed through the crowd of agitated delegates, but before they could reach the main exit, a woman's voice called out behind them, Miss Viridian, please wait. Naya turned to see an elegant woman in her 50s approaching, flanked by two bodyguards. She was human, with steel gray hair and intelligent blue eyes that seemed familiar somehow. Senator Kira Moss, the woman introduced herself, extending her hand. I knew your mother well. We served together on the Trade Ethics Committee before the accusations. Senator Moss, Naya replied cautiously, shaking the offered hand. I remember my mother mentioning you. Marina spoke of you often, Moss said, her expression softening. She was so proud of your academic achievements, your plans for the future. Her death was. It devastated many of us who knew her. Talon interrupted impatiently. Senator, with respect, we need to evacuate immediately. There are hostile forces in the building. Moss nodded grimly. I'm aware. My security team has already identified at least 3 assassination squads moving through the station. Thorn and Vaxon aren't waiting for due process. She gestured toward her bodyguards. My people can provide protection, but we need to move quickly. Why should we trust you? Zorth asked, his voice carefully neutral. Because, Moss replied, Marina Viridian saved my life once. She discovered evidence that I was being framed for embezzlement by the same people who later killed her. She warned me in time to expose the real criminals. Her voice hardened. I've been waiting 7 years for a chance to repay that debt. An explosion echoed through the building, followed by the sharp crack of energy weapons. The assembly hall's security shields activated, sealing the chamber. But Naya could see armed figures moving through the corridors beyond the transparent walls. They're not even trying to be subtle, Talon observed grimly. Desperation, Moss said. Your evidence threatens to bring down not just Thorn and Vaxon, but their entire network. They have nothing left to lose. They followed Moss and her security team through a series of maintenance corridors that led to the senator's private shuttle. The craft was sleek and well-armed, with diplomatic immunity that would protect them from direct attack by station security. Where are we going? Naya asked as they lifted off. Sanctuary, Moss replied. There's a safe house in the asteroid belt, completely off the grid. We can regroup there and plan our next move. As Titan Station fell away behind them, Naya felt Zorth's hand squeeze hers. His markings were pulsing rapidly, a sign of stress she had learned to recognize. What's wrong? She asked quietly. This is too easy, he replied. We've just exposed a conspiracy that reaches into the highest levels of government, and we're escaping in a senator's private shuttle. It feels like a trap, Talon finished, his hand moving to his weapon. Senator Moss turned in her seat to face them, and Naya felt her blood freeze. The woman's expression had changed completely, the warmth and sympathy replaced by cold calculation. Very perceptive, Moss said, though not perceptive enough, I'm afraid. The shuttle's interior lighting shifted to a harsh red as emergency locks engaged on all exits. Moss's bodyguards drew their weapons, training them on the 3 fugitives. You were part of it, Naya whispered. Part of the conspiracy. Part of it, Moss laughed. My dear girl, I helped design it. Your mother's investigation threatened to expose not just Thorn and Vaxon's operation, but the entire network we've spent decades building. Zorith's markings flared with anger. The recording of Marina warning you about the embezzlement frame-up was genuine. Moss confirmed, she did save me, and I repaid her by orchestrating her death. Ironic, isn't it? Naya felt rage boiling up inside her. She trusted you. She thought you were her friend. She was naive. Moss said dismissively. She actually believed that governments existed to serve their people. That trade was about mutual benefit rather than exploitation. It made her useful for a time, and then it made her dangerous. The shuttle shuddered as it entered the asteroid field, massive rocks tumbling slowly through space around them. Through the viewports, Naya could see a hidden facility carved into one of the larger asteroids. This is where it ends, Moss announced. You've served your purpose by exposing Thorn and Vaxon. They were becoming sloppy anyway, too visible. With them gone, I can rebuild the operation with more discreet partners. The assembly saw everything. Talon protested. The evidence is already public. Evidence provided by a wanted fugitive and the daughter of a convicted traitor. Moss shook her head. I'm already preparing a counter-narrative. Zorith Kane, desperate exile, fabricated evidence to clear his name. He seduced Marina Viridian's emotionally vulnerable daughter to help him present his lies. Tragic. Really. The shuttle docked with the asteroid facility, and they were marched through sterile corridors at gunpoint. The base was larger than it appeared from outside, with multiple levels carved deep into the rock. Impressive, isn't it? Moss said as they descended. We've been building this facility for 15 years, completely self-sufficient, undetectable to standard scans. The perfect headquarters for rebuilding our operation. They were brought to a circular chamber, deep in the asteroid's heart. The room was filled with holographic displays showing trade routes, financial networks, and what looked like detailed files on government officials from dozens of worlds. Before we conclude our business, Moss said, settling into a chair that resembled a throne, I'm curious about something. The data device Zorith has been carrying. It's not the only copy, is it? Zorith remained silent, his expression defiant. I thought not, Moss continued. You're too careful to rely on a single backup. The question is, where are the others hidden? When neither Naya nor Zorith responded, Moss gestured to one of her guards. The man stepped forward and struck Zorith across the face with his weapon, sending the Zephyrian stumbling. Stop, Naya cried, moving toward him. The locations. Moss repeated calmly, or this becomes much more unpleasant. There are no other copies, Zorith said, wiping blood from his mouth. Everything was on that single device. Moss studied him for a moment, then nodded to her guard again. This time the blow drove Zorith to his knees, his markings flickering. Weakly, that's a lie, she said, and we both know it. You're not the type to put all your data in one place. She gestured, and the guard raised his weapon for another strike. Wait, Naya said desperately. There are copies, hidden in 3 different locations across the sector. But if you kill him, you'll never find them. Moss smiled coldly. Now we're making progress. The locations. Naya's mind raced. She was lying. Of course, as far as she knew, the device they had presented to the assembly was the only copy, but she needed to buy time to find some way out of this nightmare. The first is hidden in a safety deposit box on Luna Station, she said. The second is buried in the archives of the Zephyrian Cultural Center on Proxima Colony. The third. She hesitated, as if reluctant to reveal the final location. Yes, Moss prompted. The third is with my mother's personal effects, stored in a private vault on Earth. Moss considered this clever, 3 widely separated locations, each requiring different access codes and procedures. It would take months to retrieve them all. She stood up. Fortunately, I don't need months. I only need to ensure they can never be accessed. She walked to one of the holographic displays and began entering commands. A tragic accident on Luna Station destroys their security complex. Proxima Colony suffers a mysterious data plague that corrupts all their archive systems. And Earth, well, there are always pirates in the shipping lanes. You're talking about mass murder. Talon protested. I'm talking about necessary housekeeping. Moss corrected. A few hundred casualties to protect an operation worth billions. And the stability of 3 governments. As Moss worked at the console, Naya caught Zorith's eye. Despite his injuries, she could see him looking at something behind her. Following his gaze subtly, she spotted what he had noticed, an emergency release panel for the chamber's atmospheric systems. Zorith gave an almost imperceptible nod, then suddenly lurched to his feet and charged toward the nearest guard. The man's weapon discharged, but Zorith's desperate tackle carried them both into the holographic display console. In the confusion, Naya dove for the emergency panel, slamming her fist into the release switch. Warning klaxons immediately began blaring as the chamber's atmosphere began venting into space. Emergency suits, Talon shouted, pointing to a storage locker on the far wall. They fought their way through the chaos as Moss and her guards struggled with their own emergency equipment. The sudden decompression had thrown Evrio.